Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the January 9th meeting of the Board of Sewer Commissioners. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:30. And going a little out of order. I want to start by welcoming our new sewer commissioner, Carrie Pastor. Welcome to the fray.
Thank you. Glad
Thank
to be
you.
on board.
And now could I have a roll call?
Sandy Slavin.
Carrie Pastor.
Bob Scanlon?
Scott Sobey?
And Jim Gibberti. We have meetings from our, minutes from our last meeting, which was a meeting followed by a workshop.
Okay. I have reviewed the December 12th, 24 meeting minutes and find them to be complete and accurate, and make a motion we approve the 12 minutes for the meeting.
I second the motion.
Any changes, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have reviewed the December 12th, 24 workshop minutes and find them to be complete and accurate, and make a motion we accept the 12 workshop minutes.
Second the motion.
Any additions? The only minor thing we didn't have noted in the minutes is the fact that we did take a tour of the facility.
I thought we had adjourned before we took the tour.
Oh, yeah, we did, but I just wanted to make note that we adjourned to take the tour, basically. But other than that, I don't think that's that paramount. I have a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have a contract for the town of Wareham with Colonial Ford for $75,504 for a truck with equipment. Is it,
We already received the truck, we're just paying the bill.
as it should be, I guess.
I have a question about this kind of acquisition. Is this something that is sent out for bids by other
Is it-
dealerships, or is it,
In this case, it was, but typically purchases by the town are made off of a combine system where the dealerships will upload to the combine system in a competitive format. So anything on that combine system, which is very difficult to navigate, is up for purchase and has already been vetted by the state as far as being competitive and everything else.
okay, thank you, Scott. Is your microphone on?
I think so.
Okay.
Why?
I don't know.
Speak a little loudly,
It was a
or you
s-
can pull the mic towards you.
It's a silly mistake on your part to leave this on.
Duly noted.
So, I have a question, just so I understand it, that, does this fall, so this follows the procurement rules and regulations?
Yes, and
30B.
it was, we went through
Capital
capital,
planning
Capital.
approved it.
yeah.
Right, but, so theoretically, when you go out to bid or procure a vehicle, it goes out to a bid, but you already have it in a database, basically, people,
Yeah, the state of Massachusetts database, yes.
okay.
Can I have a motion on this contract?
I make a motion, we approve the contract with Colonial Ford for $75,504 for a
For a truck?
250.
for a 2024 F-250 F-2B.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sure, pile. And We took a vote at the last meeting that needs to be ratified relative to the National Estuary Program, which was the grant that we received.
I make a motion, we ratify the vote taken on 11/14/23 for the Buzzards Bay Estuary Program not to exceed $98,637.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Scott, you want to take center stage, or you want me to go through the other stuff first?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, why don't I go... Well, let's do C and D and get them out of the way. The
Okay.
Town of Bourne, billing. This is for '24, for $104,163.75. This is capital cost reimbursement to us.
Question?
Yep.
Just so I understand, can you explain this in more detail, what this actually is as a...
Treatment plant upgrade, I believe this was for the basins. Do you know for sure, Scott?
I don't know for sure. I know this was both the 24 and 25 billings are
Right.
pre-negotiated
Right.
billings. And they are part of what was a capital improvement for the plant itself. There is an agreement between the two towns. They own 17%, I believe.
Right.
17%?
Of the billings for capital improvements, and we spread that over the same term we have.
So is this their portion of the 17?
That's correct. And again, it was pre-negotiated. This may be the fourth or fifth installment.
Is this always paid on a per annum basis, or is it monthly or
No, it's annual.
Annual, yeah.
per annum?
My question is, since it says $9 million for the 891 loan forgiveness, why are there two invoices with two different amounts if they seem to be titled the same?
Again, these are the pre-negotiated.
Oh, one's for 24
One's for
and one's for
24.
25?
Right.
Okey dokey, I see that. So I make a motion that we authorize the billing to the town of Bourne for FY '24 capital cost in the amount of $104,163.75.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have a second one for fiscal
I make a
year-
motion, we authorize the billing of the town of Bourne for FY '25 capital cost in the amount for $100,210.21.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's theirs. Just a quick explanation on the check that was presented to the selectmen a couple of weeks ago in the amount of $4 million from Plymouth County Commissioners. That was really the reimbursement for ARPA funds that was spent in connection with Swiss Speech and a generator. So that was kind of a wash item. Came in, it looked like we were getting something for nothing, but we didn't get it. They were just replenishing. What we used was funds that we were authorized, that $4 million for ARPA, and we used it. And we spent that money based on the fact that we were going to get that money back from ARPA funds, essentially. So that's really all that amounted to.
It costs $4 million for that, up to Swiss Beach, what I know it as, the construction of the...
It wasn't complete, it was less than 4 million. It was, I don't remember what the exact number was. It was a little less than 4 million, but the balance of it went into a generator or two. Generator,
I believe so, yeah. We have a new one at Salt Works, and,
that's it.
yeah, so
'Cause that was a,
they not only replaced the generator, but they actually moved it out of the floodplain.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
yep,
December 12th, didn't we approve the money for Bourne for capital?
the money that we approved, the billing that we approved,
If I
yeah, I
take
think
a
that was
look
the
at the
billing.
December 12th minutes,
billing that we approved,
There was other billing done, so
is
there,
it capital cost fee for plant
that was
upgrade?
separate, that was, yeah,
Capital cost fees for equalization basin. So what we just approved was above and beyond this almost 500,000 we billed them already for capital?
right.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I hope we give them a little bit better explanation as to what this
We have it.
100,000's for. Okay,
Okay, Scott, Green Center Solar Home Tour.
Okay, so I put a little PowerPoint presentation together. You can refer to the screen for that. In December, a group of interested Wareham residents and a few others went to the Green Center in Falmouth, Massachusetts, which was formerly known as the Alchemy Center, which was a property set up by a bunch of scientists from Woods Hole in the 70s to look at alternative ways of living, essentially. They have gardens and a greenhouse and a number of other kinds of facilities. And one of the things they have there as well is a project to divert urine from their septic stream, and that urine then is processed and is used as fertilizer in their gardens. They also have a way of diverting what Sandy would refer to, I think, as product, which is also used in their gardens after some more processing. Jimmy asked me to put a little presentation together to talk about that. And of course, it's of interest to us because of the impact of nitrogen that's flowing into wastewater and then down into the groundwater and then into estuaries and ponds and lakes and rivers and so on. So first of all, I have a disclaimer. So a lot of the slides and images that I'm going to show you were supplied by the Green Center as part of their presentation. The information is here presented essentially as during the site visit and demonstration, meaning that I've tried not to put any editorial slant on the kinds of things that they presented, although I can't help a little bit. And then only the final slide and my subscript calculations represent my interpretation of impressions, observations, and view of policy considerations. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to be neutral about this until we get to the end slide. So if we look at the big picture, so the question is about population and residential growth on Cape Cod and other seaside communities, including our own. They've outgrown the capacity of both the natural systems and man-made wastewater systems to handle the waste. I've put handle in red because I didn't know what other verb to put there. It seemed kind of gross to me, but you know what I mean, right?
Exactly.
To process, or I'm not sure what the right verb is.
That's good enough.
Nitrogen and phosphorus from wastewater flow into the water table and then into estuaries, lakes, and streams, and that results in eutrophication and algal blooms and fish die-offs and a lot of other bad things that happens. This is happening across Cape Cod and other seaside communities throughout New England, and it's not something that's new or unique to us, but certainly we are affected by these things. And a relatively low percentage of homes and businesses are connected to wastewater treatment plants. This is throughout Cape Cod. And a lot of old septic systems don't effectively remove nitrogen or phosphorus or other nutrients from wastewater. So that means all of that stuff is flowing into our resource areas. Also of note is that sewering and other nitrogen removal devices or methods are expensive. So that seems to be a limiting factor. I think otherwise, everyone would be sewered already. And so, therefore, alternatives need to be considered. So just a few statistics, and these are, once again, these are from the Green Center. These are not my numbers. I have no idea what I produce in a year. But according to them, a human, and I guess this is an adult, in my experience with my kids, it seems like about 5 times this amount, but let's just say for the average adult, about 120 gallons of urine a year and 15 gallons of feces a year, which then results in a total of about 10 pounds of nitrogen per year. And they made the point also that it's expensive to remove nitrogen from the system. So they have a rough comparison here. I'm not sure where they got these numbers, but they give a range for sewer systems like ours, the ones we're mostly involved with, between $300 and $431 per pound for a sewer system to remove nitrogen. These IA septic systems, which are new to me, I hadn't really thought about them or heard about them much before. I mean, we can talk about those some later, with a huge range of cost of nitrogen removal, up to $723 per pound. Incinerating toilets and these PPOD, which may be an unfortunate name, urinal incinerating toilets, about $50, and then this whole idea of urine diversion, which has been part of a big project in Brattleboro, Vermont, about $35 per pound. Once again, I can't be held responsible for these numbers. These are what was presented. But I did do a little calculation, and at the low end for the sewer system then would be about $3,000 per year, which may or may not make sense since our sewer fees, annual sewer fees, are nowhere near $3,000 per person. So I don't know if that reflects that the numbers are not correct that they've given here, or that we're not removing very much of the nitrogen from the wastewater system. We can talk about this after, or if you want to interrupt, that's okay too, but we can certainly talk about that. This is one of their main slides. So they talk about a linear system. So water comes into the house, you produce product that goes into that water system, and it flows outward in one way or another, in a direct way or indirect way, into the groundwater and then surrounding waters, the resource areas. And so, you know, in the old days, before toilets and sewer systems, there was a cycle. So people made product and it went back into the land, and then it was, you know, grown up in crops and whatever, and then in a cycle. And so they've claimed that cycle is now broken by making this linear thing. And you know, while they're saying this, and if I can just interrupt and put an editorial note in here, I gotta say, when they were talking about all this, I realized that I love my toilets. I think it's great. You know, you flush them, it's gone. You don't have to worry about it. Works out of here. It works. Everything's fine. But the presentation made me think a little bit more that maybe I shouldn't love my toilet so much. So this is an important statistic they give down below here. And once again, I'm not sure what their source is or if it's accurate or not, but I'll present it as they did. So the main source of nitrogen is urine, which is only 1% of the volume of the waste stream, but it contains 80% of the nitrogen. They also talked about 90% of the nitrogen. So there's some kind of range there, 80 to 90% of the nitrogen and about half of the phosphorus. So that's a big disparity in the amount, if this is accurate, the amount of nitrogen entering the stream and how much the stream is. So they say that pea cycling matters. So
Do you keep a straight face?
I did keep a straight face. Well, this is very serious stuff, as you know. So this is, they're trying to say that this thing can be made back into a cycle again in a way that conserves water. And this comes from the Rich Earth Institute up in Vermont. It's more socially equitable, affordable, I'm not sure about that, reliable, produces fertilizers, recover nutrients, and reduces pollution. So it's obviously a great thing if you can do it. They also made a point that recycling, this pea-cycling, conserves a lot of fresh water. So their calculations, once again, are it takes 2,000 gallons per person per year to flush 15 gallons of feces, 4,000 gallons a year to flush 120 gallons of urine. So that's about 6,000 gallons per year. I don't know, Scott, if your calculations are about like that or not. And then they also point out that another 6,000 gallons of gray water, so things like dishwashing and laundry and showers
Showering.
and stuff like that. Yeah. So about 12,000 gallons per year into wastewater, and very, very small percentage of that is actually human waste that needs to be processed. So there's a huge volume moving through the system with only a small, relatively small amount of what actually has to be processed. So their suggestion is to divert that urine especially, and there are a number of devices, very simple devices. If you look on the left square, there's a little like a jerry can with a red funnel on top of it. It's called a QB, and basically you pee into the QB, and then that pee goes into a storage facility for 6 months, which then eliminates the pathogens. And then if you use that in your own garden or landscape, it doesn't even have to be treated. It can go right in there. But if it goes out off the property, then it has to be treated in some additional way. And the way they do that is by pasteurization, which is shown here, about a penny a gallon, they claim. And then they also address things like pharmaceuticals. We're all aware that things like antibiotics and statins and other kinds of medications don't necessarily get broken down in the body, and they can be recalcitrant molecules. In other words, they're hard to break down. But these chemicals, they're saying, can sit in the soil where there are a lot of kinds of microorganisms that will eventually break them down. As a microbiologist, I'm pretty sure that's true, but I'd have to know for each one of those compounds and which kind of microorganisms and how long each one actually takes. But the principle is clear. And then there's also community scale infrastructure. So if a lot of people were involved in this pea cycling, places like Brattleboro, Vermont, they have an infrastructure built that takes care of this separated urine. There are guys that come and they collect the urine, and it gets added to, in a big tank or truck, and it gets added to a processing facility. That gets then turned into nitrogen fertilizer for agriculture up in Brattleboro, which the farmers apparently, according to these presenters, are very happy about that because it's much reduced their nitrogen fertilizer costs. A number of ways of dealing with that, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of infrastructure involved. And the facility they have at the Green Center in that house that we visited actually looks a lot like this. So there's a toilet with a big tube below it that goes down into basically a trash bin in the basement. And I thought there was going to be odor associated with this. There was no odor at all. There's no urine odor. There's no fecal odor. And that's because there's an exhaust fan that controls all that kind of stuff, and they keep it clean, and it was actually pretty impressive.
Please tell me that there were no live demonstrations during all of this.
There were no live demonstrations during any of this, but one could well imagine how it would all work. Okay. Yeah, and then, so below the toilet is a full cycle composting system, and actually as the moisture is reduced from the fecal matter, and they actually add wood shavings in there as well to, I think, control the pH, and to keep it from matting too much.
Where does the fecal matter go in this diagram?
In the blue trash bin at the bottom.
And how is that disposed of, if I can use that term?
Yeah, it takes a long time actually for that to fill because it dehydrates over time. So I think they're talking like
And
4.
this is in the basement too?
This is in the basement next to the urine tank, yeah. So it takes like 5 months for those 2 people to fill, plus their guests, to fill the trash bin, which was
So
amazing.
there's no flushing?
There is no flushing, no. They use toilet paper, I mean, that's not different.
So you use no odor in the basement.
No odor anywhere,
What about odor up top of the toilet if there is no, well,
no odor anywhere. It was really amazing,
yeah.
yeah. Even with that little QB thing, where was that? Back here, the little jerry can with
Yeah,
they use a little bit of a spray of vinegar, and that apparently neutralizes the pH, and they just never get any urine. I didn't get my face right down into the funnel,
well, that's good.
but it seems to be pretty good. So I've got a number of, so that's the presentation. Are there any questions about the presentation so far before I get to my conclusions?
They're comfortable using the urine to fertilize.
They're very comfortable using the urine to fertilize, yeah.
I spent 3 years in Japan. We were not able to eat any of the local product
Yeah.
because of their honey bucket.
When I was a kid at Onset in the summers, there was a guy who came through the campgrounds. Believe it or not, he had a little horse-drawn cart and with vegetables on it and raspberries and other fruits. And it always looked wonderful to me. And I would say to my mother, why don't we buy, vegetables and fruits from that guy? He's a local guy. And she said, because it's grown in night soil. I had no idea what night soil was, but it was good enough for me. And by the way, I tell that story to my wife, who's from Minnesota, and she says, what century did you grow up in? So anyway, yeah, I understand. But this stuff is composted, and after 6 months, there are no pathogens left. And of course, once these compounds, and if it's probably mostly ammonia, once it gets into the soil, the nitrifying bacteria are going to modify it very quickly. So, okay, so here are my conclusions. So obviously nitrogen and phosphorus are important pollutants that need to be removed from effluent water. Ecosystems are already adversely affected by nitrogen and phosphorus pollution. Did any of you get a chance to look at that short Scientific American video I sent the link to?
I did not.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So
Before you move on, may I ask a dumb question? Because I'm not a biological chemist. What is so bad about nitrogen? What is the negative effect of both of those, the N and the P?
okay, so nitrogen and phosphorus are really important fertilizers.
Correct.
That's essentially their fertilizers. And so normally ocean water, limnic environments, so freshwater systems, usually very, very poor in nitrogen. And so the growth of algae, the limiting factor is nitrogen, or maybe it's phosphorus, or one of the two. So if nitrogen and phosphorus are added to the system, then the algae can take advantage of that, and they outgrow everything, and they can remove all of the, well, not all, but quite a lot of the oxygen from the water.
Right.
And so there's not any oxygen left, or not enough oxygen for the other organisms to survive. So you get these massive
Fish.
die-offs. Fish,
Yeah, fish and, yep.
yeah, shellfish, there's all kinds of stuff that, crustaceans as well. Any of the
So
gills.
it's the algae that feeds off it that overwhelms the oxygen system, so to speak?
That's right. And, then the algae starts to smell, and some of it gives off toxic compounds, and you can't swim in the water, and so on. Scott, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was pretty much it. That I think, you need both the phosphorus and the nitrogen, and what they really found was the nitrogen was the trigger. for the phosphorus uptake, which caused the algae blooms.
Yep.
So reducing the nitrogen was step one. And also, you know, like our plant, we also remove the phosphorus from the discharge. But the phosphorus is gonna happen naturally in the environment, you're gonna have that.
Right.
So limiting the influx of higher nitrogen levels is what's supposed to keep the algae blooms down.
But you do need some algae though, don't you? For the ecosystem to work properly?
Some, but
Yes.
the systems are adapted for those very low nitrogen and phosphorus levels, so that algal levels are kept under control by that.
All right.
And you might say, well, why aren't farms covered with algae then? Why is the soil not covered completely? And the reason is because in a soil system, maybe I shouldn't go this far into it, but I've started, so I'm going to finish.
Go.
In a soil system, things like phosphorus and to a certain extent nitrogen are controlled by the pH of the soil. And phosphorus is converted to a form that is not readily available. So in a soil system, it requires fungi to release the phosphorus for the plants to use. And nitrogen is also converted very quickly by bacteria into different forms, so nitrates, nitrites, ammonia. And then there are a lot of bacteria that will then convert that right back into nitrogen, and it goes back into the atmosphere. But those control systems are not present in aquatic systems
Okay.
to the same extent. Anyway, certainly there are bacteria in water, but they don't act the same way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Keep asking me microbiology questions, I can keep going. So another conclusion, populations and development are going to increase in Wareham over time. I think it's certainly clear. Septic systems, especially old and failing systems, need to be replaced by sewering where possible, and IA systems where sewering is impractical. And we can talk about IA systems at some other time. So I have some more conclusions. There are some alternatives like composting, toilet, urine diversion systems, et cetera, but they all require something. So those things are significant alterations to residential commercial structures. I showed you one such structure. You have to have a basement. You have to have additional storage space in bathrooms, basements, outdoor areas. Yeah, Jimmy sent around a little brochure about another kind of high-tech toilet that removes these things. It's another kind of composting toilet, but you'll see it's the size of a Volkswagen.
Exactly, yeah.
So, you know, a lot of bathrooms are small. They wouldn't be able to accommodate those kinds of things. And then there's requirement for storage in basements, and a lot of people don't even have basements for storage area, and outdoor areas. And something like an apartment complex or condo complex, I mean, they'd have to have warehouses built to hold these things. There also would have to be commitment by homeowners, business owners to perform additional duties besides flushing to make these systems work. So there's a little commitment. So these tanks have to be emptied and moved around and stored and so on. And it's not just a matter of flushing and going about your business. Once in a while, you have to do other stuff as well. So people would have to learn how to use these systems and then commit to using them. And then the state has not approved any that I know of that they would told us about urine separation fixtures. So instead of the little jerry can with a funnel, there are fixtures that are approved in other places, other countries, especially in Europe and Japan, that automatically remove the urine from the flow. The state has not approved any of those, so plumbers cannot install them. They can only install, licensed plumbers can only install state-approved fixtures. So that's a holdup. And then some other conclusions, some alternatives. There are comprehensive cost, so we need to have also comprehensive cost comparisons between traditional handling and alternatives. So let's say that one of these alternative systems cost a third or a tenth or a quarter of a traditional system, or if there are tax incentives and so on, that might make them more viable than they would be right now. So right now there's so much inertia or momentum for traditional systems, it would be really hard for people to break that. There would have to be development of significant infrastructure, like pickup services, decontamination storage facilities, service and repair facilities, and technicians, if any large number of people were going to do this. Now, they've done it en masse in Brattleboro, Vermont, and it's working very well there, apparently. I've not been up there to check it out, but this is what was in the presentation. But for other areas, it would take a significant investment in these infrastructure projects. There'd have to be adaptation by local, large, and small-scale agriculture to use these alternative fertilizers. They'd have to learn how to use them. They'd have to, the USDA might choose to regulate. There could be regulatory issues, EPA even. And then there would have to be adaptation to different approaches to waste by the public and public authorities. And then, as I mentioned before, there'd be significant short and long-term financial investments by the public and private sectors. So I don't know what the answers are going to be. We're certainly confronted with these immediate pollution problems. Only a part of the town of Wareham is connected to the sewer system. I don't know what the answers are, but I do think that the alternatives need to be considered, but I think it's a tough row to hoe. Are there any other questions?
Now, the Board of Health regulates the septic systems, Title Vs, et cetera. Is this something they should be aware of in case there might be some decision as looking at this as opposed to putting a $50,000 nitrogen-reducing system in?
Well, certainly. And I don't know how to move forward with this, whether it's, it's an area where more than one committee or commission would be involved, whether it's Conservation Commission and Health Department and Sewer Commission, whether there needs to be a working group that looks at alternatives, maybe Buzzards Bay Coalition's part of that, I don't know. I don't know how to move forward. This group would know better than I would what to do with this information, if anything.
What percentage of the town is covered by septic, their septic?
I think it's about 60%.
Is it that? I don't think it's that.
60% is septic and 40% is sewer. Is that right, Scott?
I think that's what I've been understood.
Not land-wise, but structure-wise.
Structure-wise, right? Yeah. For drawing.
As an aside, Scott, can you speak to the numbers as far as nitrogen is concerned, that the end result that's going into the outfall? I've heard that that's very, very low.
Yeah, the wastewater plant performs exceptionally well. For most of the summer, we were less than 1 milligram per liter, or 1 part per million of total nitrogen. So that's ammonia, or TKN in this case, plus nitrate, plus nitrite, all combined is less than 1 milligram per liter, part per million.
Is there any ammonia left? Did you say ammonia?
So TKN is the organic ammonia left over.
Okay.
And that is added into the total nitrogen calculation. But nitrate-wise, we were fractional. And
What
same
about
with TKN.
phosphorus? How's that? Do you have a number for?
Less than 0.02.
Put less than 0.02
Milligrams per liter, part per
milligrams per
million.
liter? Okay, ppm.
Wow. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good system. That is interesting, the presentation there, that there's merit to it. This certainly raises questions, and obviously how to implement that. What do we do still? People are gonna be shower water going out the door, dishwasher water going out the door, what do we do with that? But I think it's interesting enough to.
Thank you, Scott. Very informative.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Let's certainly appreciate your presentation on this. Obviously, a lot of us couldn't make it to that, and you're right, it's something that we need to at least be aware of, whether or not it's practical for implementation. Well, maybe someplace down the road, but as you pointed out, there's an awful lot of infrastructure that's going to be associated with it that's not even out there yet.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't know what the policy considerations are, even all of them. And I don't think the answer to the nitrogen phosphorus pollution is going to be one thing. It's not going to be just everybody goes on sewer, or everybody has an IA system, or whatever. I think it's going to have to be a hybrid that makes sense economically and physically for different areas. So Great Neck, for example, might be a different solution than, I don't know, for downtown Wareham, I don't know.
Or Shangri-La,
Or Shangri-La, or any of these
which
other
is very
areas.
compacted homes.
You're saying they're put tight together?
Hmm?
You're saying the homes are tight together?
There's a lot of homes up in Shangri-La.
Do I know it? Again, thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Again, you're
That
welcome.
was good. Okay, well, you have the floor. Would you like to give us a quick update on
Sure.
EDU?
Let me bring up my notes. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. And I've been typing up my notes on this. So I've contacted the Onset Water Department head, his name is Dave, and the Wareham Water Department head, Andy. And we actually had very long discussions, way longer than I expected. We talked about metering, billing, software, issues they have with billing, issues they have with metering, what their long-term ideas are for their water systems, and a little bit about the history. So, for example, I forget who, one of them told me that there are separate water districts, and that's a historical thing, that they were created by the Massachusetts legislature in 1906.
Right.
So to fuse them back together, it would take an act of the legislature. And once again, it's one of these things where there's inertia or momentum. It's hard to keep thinking of, Newtonian physics, where an object in motion tends to stay in motion without changing direction, unless there's another force acting on it. So I think there's a lot of momentum or inertia on these things, and it would take considerable pressure to change them, if it was advisable even to change them. So Onset Water has about 3,000 connections, and Wareham has about 12,000 connections. They use two different software packages for calculations and billing, but they're both based on cubic feet of water that go through the meter in both districts. They check the meters at different numbers of times per year. Onset has radio or remote reading of the meters, and Wareham still has to do that visually. They have to go into each home and look at those meters individually, although Wareham is converting over to a remote or radio reading at this point. Onset uses a different kind of software. It's called Springbrook software. Neither of these guys was all that familiar with the software, and I don't blame them. They've got other things to think about. But they weren't sure about what kind of format the data is converted to when it's out of its raw form. And I think Bob talked with both these guys last year about some of the same things. I would say that both of these guys are interested in helping out if we move to a different system. But they're both greatly aware that they are lacking in resources and personnel to tackle another project. So they're both shy about committing to anything specific at this point. Neither Wareham nor Onset Water Districts wants to be responsible for deduction meters or metering. So a deduction meter is a meter that looks at the amount of water that's not going into the sewer system. So someone who's using water in a pool or for irrigation or whatever, if they use
Or washing their cars.
washing their cars, there are places where where there are deduction meters present, and they're about $1,500 to install one of those things. So the question, this be another policy decision, if we went to metering, would deduction meters be allowed? Would they be encouraged? Who would pay for their installation? Who would do the reading and maintenance, all that kind of stuff. So those are policy things that would have to be discussed. And of course, I wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel. I would find out what other towns are doing, because all the other towns
Exactly.
are doing this kind of thing. I also left a message, or a couple of messages, with Melissa Labonte from South Hadley. She's in charge of the wastewater program there. South Hadley also uses EDU for their billing. And I wanted to see how they deal with commercial and industrial users as far as assigning EDUs. Their website says that they bill commercial industrial customers on the basis of, and this is the list, the type of facility, water usage, which indicates some kind of metering, wastewater strength and volume. So I'm not sure exactly what wastewater strength would be, although you can imagine that they're testing for organic components, nitrogen, and so on, and the number of employees, but there are no details available on the website. So that's why I want to talk to Melissa to see if I can get those details. Once again, I'm shy about reinventing the wheel if someone's already figured out a super way of fairly assessing these things. So my recommendation at this point, and once again, it's early days, is to continue investigating ways to make EDU processes fair and progressive. And secondly, to establish a working group to move toward billing based on water usage. And that working group could be the Onset and Wareham Water Department supervisors, one of the sewer commissioners, and then others could be added, like software experts or the town manager, or someone from that department, or sewer department director, as needed, but not at the beginning. So I think there are two ways to do this. One would be shorter term, revising the EDUs. One would be longer term, which would be moving toward a flow rate system. And there are, of course, issues with converting to billing by water usage. One is the differences between billing software packages, although I think that's probably a minor thing, honestly.
Yeah,
Having dealt with software changes over the years in my lab equipment and so on, I think that's a minor thing, although that feels like a major thing for these water department people. Would you agree, Bob? That
I think so, yeah.
Conversion dates and planning, and what the publicity involved would be. How would you inform the public, and why? You have to justify all that kind of stuff. And then questions about deductions for irrigation, other non-sewer water uses, and then probably a lot of other stuff that would be involved with that changeover as well. So that's where I am at this point. I also did quite a lot of searching for information about different ways of billing for sewer, and there's really not that much. Certainly almost nothing in the scientific literature, so nobody's really studying this I don't think, from a scientific point of view. So that's where I am at the moment, Jimmy.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Very good. At least we've got a direction to go in that's better than we've had.
Nice. Doctor, you go back to the connection of water in Onset and Wareham. What was the percentage you had mentioned earlier?
For water,
Yes.
water connections?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 100%. So building code requires any inhabited dwelling to have a water connection.
All
right. Wareham has 12,000 service units.
All right.
And Onset has 3,000. I mean, these are obviously rough numbers.
Yeah. Okay.
So whatever is not connected to the water is off a well, is their own well water.
Yeah, so as far as I understand the building codes, well water would be a connection to a water source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that part of the 12 and 3?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Do we know how many structures?
Around well water?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't think the water department.
Did you have the name of the software package Wareham uses? Because you use
Yes, I do.
Springbrook for Onset.
Yes.
Northern,
Northern data.
no, that's, oh, I lost it. Let me get, yeah, okay, so it's, Onset, oh yeah, Wareham uses Edifice software,
That's
and
what
Onset
you
uses Springbrook with Neptune meters, and I don't know if Wareham used the same meters or not, the same manufacturer for meters or not. But I would say that, okay, let's look at the raw data. Let's look at cubic feet per whatever. So, one other note, both these guys were great to talk to. They're both really knowledgeable, enthusiastic about what they do, and you know, what the future holds. They're both enthusiastic about working with us. I would say, though, that Andy from Wareham was a lot more happy about supplying things like spreadsheets and so on. I think he's already supplied to Bob. I think that's a little bit more cumbersome for Dave. I think he would need more help maybe in generating a spreadsheet for comparison uses.
Yeah,
Okay?
I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next item we have is, we have a special town meeting coming up Monday night. I think the primary item, there's more than one item, but the primary item is the accessory dwelling units that are being proposed. And it looks like that this is kind of a step to get something passed and in place prior to the state's edict of this going into effect.
Yep, so one article is to put a moratorium on it, and the other article is to pass this bylaw.
Right.
And I ask that this be put on the agenda because I believe we need to be in a proactive state to be able to answer any questions regarding the impact of the accessory dwelling on our system. Do we just connect it? I mean, I read it in here that, where did I read it? That it will be part of the existing homeowner's sewer system. Are we comfortable with that? I'm trying to find it in here. I know I
Yeah,
read it.
it's Article 853, number 8.
The principal dwelling and accessory dwelling unit shall have common utilities, including septic, electric, and water service.
Right.
Does that mean that they will tie into the existing sewer line
Yes.
with no additional cost?
That, I don't think you're talking apples and tangerines right now. You know.
Right.
Are they talking to, they have to tie in.
They have
They
to.
have to apply to get an ADU. If they apply and they tie in into existing sewer, based on what we have already established, it would indicate to me that we should be charging one EDU additional.
So each
That's a separate entity.
ADU, which is separate from the principal house, will
Correct.
have its own EDU.
I would say yes.
But it says in here that if they have, they can have a 4-bedroom, can be separated into 2 units.
They would still have to get permission for that. And to me, that would indicate one EDU.
As opposed to 1.3 EDU for 4 bedrooms.
Because you're establishing something independent of what you had to begin with.
But you have an EDU for 3 bedrooms, correct?
Correct.
And if there was a
That's
a structure that
up to 3.
had 2, and then you put the accessory on the lot, does that become one as a 3-unit? Or each one have the separate EDU?
Each building would have its own, if I understand, Jimmy,
Yeah, that's
each
what I'm trying-
building will have its own EDU billing.
If they're doing separate units, I mean, the way I'm looking at reading this, the way I've read this,
Yes.
going through, and the way they're doing it, even though they'll offer them some different configurations on how you establish it, and an additional dwelling unit. The additional dwelling unit, if there's another piece in it, has to have, cooking as well. So if you're going to allow an additional dwelling unit, whether it's a separate entity or part of the existing, from our standpoint, I feel that we should be charging another EDU because they're providing additional flow and et cetera into the system. Now, whether it's 1 bedroom or 3 bedrooms, I don't care, because what we've established now is a unit on residential, which this is up to 3 bedrooms. So that's 1, 2, or 3. It would probably
Okay.
be one EDU.
Do we already have a distinguishment between rental units as well. So if you have one standing structure with 3, a 3-family house, it's one structure with 3 separate apartments, where it might be 2, 3 bedrooms per separate unit. Each one's getting an EDU. So we just had this go the opposite way, actually, on High Street, where previously the person had a multi-family house that he now considers a singular house. He doesn't rent it anymore. The partitions have been taken, I don't know how. I didn't go in the house and investigate, but this is what has been presented by the assessors to us, that it's now not a rental unit, it's not being rented, it's just a sole individual living back in the house. So it now is a 6-bedroom house, 1 EDU.
1.3.
0.3.
No, because it was previously existing. So it's a pre-existing house, already connected. However, the carriage house or large garage out back now is 2 rental units and has an EDU each. So we already have this established. So if someone builds an outbuilding and rents it, it's now a separate EDU.
Gotcha.
Period. It's already established. We already have this established. And if they want to go further, every time they shave off something and rent it, it's an EDU. So it's already established. I think we've already accomplished it. And then as far as people adding from here on in, you guys voted back in, it was May or June, I can't remember, but that going forward, you want to put a 4th bedroom on, right, you're 1.3 EDUs and so on and so forth.
I just wanted it clear, we all agree that an additional structure or an additional unit broken out of the
Existing structure.
existing home is an additional EDU to be paid by the owner of the property,
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, so the bottom line is.
as opposed to having the renter of 6 months of the year pay the EDU. It comes back to the person who owns the land.
Correct. Any ADU is one additional
EDU.
EDU.
The bylaws allow for up to 4 bedrooms.
No. That's, do
So-
we change that?
Number 4?
No, if you
Well,
have an
that's-
existing bedroom, you can break them apart.
Yeah, if you have 4 bedrooms or better, you can take 2 of them and make them into an
Accessory.
accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
That's what that is.
But the total bedrooms in the lot cannot exceed 4.
Okay.
So we all agree that it's already, we've already established this, we're already doing this anyhow.
Should the question come up at town meeting, we have an answer.
Okay,
So all the meters have to be the same? So electric meter, water meter,
right.
they have to be the same for both structures? You can't have separate billing then?
That's what it says on number 8.
Yep. Okay.
Separate billing, but paid by the owner of the property.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, I don't see a renter coming in and being given because they said 6 months of rental, right?
Yeah, right.
A minimum of 6 months
Minimum
rent.
6 months.
Yeah.
Minimum of 6 months.
So they'll just include that in the rental fee. They'll just include that in the rental fee anyhow.
But they don't pay it directly is what, I think Sandy, you're...
No,
Yeah, the owner would pay
It
it.
wouldn't be a separate billing to the renter.
Right,
It would only be to the homeowner,
To the landowner.
yeah.
I'm just,
whoever it is, whoever gets the bill.
whoever gets
The
the
assessed owner.
assessed owner.
Yeah, so,
Didn't I read recently that, that sewer bills or water bills have to go to the landowner or to the property owner? They cannot go to a renter, I think by law. Just read that recently, like yesterday. I could be mistaken.
I don't know.
No, it makes sense.
The electrical doesn't, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we all
Okay,
knew about this. Jimmy didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I asked that it be included, and I believe I'm glad we spent the time so we all understand.
okay. And next,
Oh, so what time is that meeting on Monday?
7 o'clock
7 o'clock at the
at the high school auditorium
Okay.
on Viking Drive
Yep.
on Monday, the 13th.
It's on the left-hand side when you go in the door.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Scott, the other Scott.
Scott, number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so construction at the plant continues, everything looks really good, they're moving very quickly, and even in this cold weather, they've been able to pour concrete, it hasn't held up. They did have 2 weeks of downtime for the holidays. I will say, something occurred at the plant regarding the health of the bacteria. We had a bit of a lapse during actually the Christmas side, and it's recovered last week, and further recovering this week, but it came back pretty quick. We actually went through an upset at the plant, not 100% sure what's going on, but I did notice a change in some of the laboratory results. So everything's back to normal now, but just wanted to make it clear that it did happen. So we had some late nights and things like that, but everything's recovered. There was never any discharge to the river or anything funky, nothing like that. It's just want to make you aware that it's a biological system. Things get sick, and it happened, and it recovered pretty quickly, just like anyone else. So
How long was that period?
it was a week.
A week?
Yeah, with recovery for the next week. But within a few days it went downhill, and a few days it was downhill, and it took a week to actually go downhill and a week to come back, so.
Do you look at just indicator species, or do you look at everything? How is that monitoring done?
We look at everything, so, yeah. But we have daily triggers to look at things, the settling of the bacteria itself, how it behaves. And then, okay, the effluent results, secondary results. We look at multiple parameters to see what's going on.
So it sounds to me like believe it or not, like an infection. It sounds like a phage infection, perhaps. Some phages came in, killed off a bunch of bacteria, upset the system, and then eventually the bacteria are going to evolve to be resistant to those phages. Do you ever monitor for bacteriophages?
No, some of the things that also happen, the bacteria change over when we get from warmer weather to colder weather, goes from a mesotrophic to a cytotrophic, and we had huge temperature swings. It went from, having 3 days in a row that were in the 20s, and then followed by the next week was all in the 50s, so.
Well, you confused the bacteria. It
these
didn't know
things
what to
happen.
do.
Yeah, they actually change, so there are a whole different group of bacteria come in.
Do they take their coats off?
Do
Think it's summer.
you monitor temperature as well of the tanks?
Yeah, every day.
And how much does temperature swing do you get?
Not significant, but enough that it dips below that 19.5 degrees Celsius mark, which is the tipping point.
Yeah, I noticed that one of those tanks, new tanks, it's going in, it's got insulation on the outside of it.
That's not a tank, that's actually a structure, but yeah.
Oh, that's going to be a structure, okay.
Yeah, and so the sodium hydroxide in that building always has to stay
Okay.
above 55 degrees, otherwise it begins to gel up.
Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, I would think that the temperature, because the mass of the liquid in those tanks is got to be huge. It's got to take a long time for the temperature to change very much.
Right, but quite a few cold days and nights in a row, followed by really warm days and not as cold nights. It takes a little bit of time, but again, if you have a huge dip followed by a fairly significant spike, that's the tipping point.
Okay.
So anyway, like I said, everything's back to normal. System's
Yeah.
working great.
It would be interesting to see if there are like I say, you do definitely have bacteria, I can guarantee you've got bacteriophages in those tanks.
Yeah, we looked at we did a microscopic examination of the bacteria to see what we have as far as what we should expect, what we need, what we have. And at the time we looked, we were getting back to the bacteria that we need and want. And we didn't see any, like a lot of things that damage the settling as filamentous bacteria, we didn't have any of that. So it's not clear what happened. We're still, reviewing, triaging, but everything's recovered.
Yeah, there's
And,
likely, there's nothing you can do about it anyway.
not a lot, there's not a lot we can do, but if we see it coming, we make adjustments, and again, the staff was great, so they did everything proper.
Anything else, Scott?
That is all.
Thank you very much. Do we have any unanticipated items? Going forward, our next meeting date will be January 23rd at 6:30 here in this lovely environment.
Ready? I make a motion, we adjourn at 7:36 in time for kickoff.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
And go again, Scott.
Yes.
Thank you, Scott, it was
Are we
informative.
closed?